You're working hard, studying for hours, grinding every day, and not getting the results you want to see. Why? Because hard work doesn't equal effectiveness. Most people mistake effort for results. They spend time highlighting textbooks and wonder why they fail the exam. They spend 12 hours a day studying and wonder why they're not progressing. The problem is not your work ethic, it's your effectiveness. This is Find Out with Stephen, episode 3. Today we're breaking down why most people lack effectiveness in their studying, communication, decision making, and in life, and the exact framework to fix each of them. If you're tired of working hard and staying stuck, this is the episode for you. Alright, let's find out. Before we go into solutions, let's talk about why this matters. I've seen it everywhere, in my law school, in my basketball court, even in my own life. People grinding, but not moving forward. And I've realized something. Most of us were never taught how to be effective. I'm going to say that again. Most of us were never taught how to be effective. We were taught to work hard, but not smart. The society glorifies hustle and not effectiveness. We celebrate the person who says, I went for night class, I stayed up all night and studied, but not the person who says, I studied for just 2 hours and I aced the test. There's a difference. Effort is how much energy you put in, whereas effectiveness is how much value you get out. You can work for 10 hours and get nothing, or you can work for 2 hours and produce everything. In 2013, a study was carried out by Donowski, focusing on the study strategies done by students. And they found out that the most common techniques, such as highlighting, rereading, and summarization, were rated as low utility. What that means is most students study ineffectively because they were never taught better study methods. So if highlighting and rereading doesn't work, what does? Let's break that down. I'll be talking about effective study routines, then communication, and finally decision making. Alright, let's go into the first part. Effective studying. Let's talk about studying because this affects most of you watching. Students, professionals, anyone who's trying to retain information. So if you're rereading, summarizing, and highlighting, I'm sorry to tell you this, you're wasting your time. All this are passive. Highlighting is a practice that feels productive. You finish a whole chapter, your textbook looks like a rainbow, and you feel so accomplished. Congratulations, you now own a very colorful book that you still don't understand. Rereading is one of the most common practices. It creates an illusion of knowing. You recognize the words on the page, but you can't actually recall it. It's like watching the same movie 5 times and feeling like you can now direct one. It doesn't work like that. Summarization without active recall is also a passive process because just rephrasing words doesn't help with your understanding. So if all this doesn't work, what does? Let's go into the solutions. The same study done by Donowski found that 3 techniques were rated as high utility. The first one is active recall. The second one is spaced repetition. And the last one is interleaving study. Let's start with active recall. What is it? Active recall is simply testing yourself on a material without looking at your notes. How does it work? When you try to retrieve knowledge from your long-term memory, it strengthens your neural pathways. In other words, it increases your brain storage. It's like a muscle. Retrieval is the reps that strengthens your muscles. Rereading is like watching another person lift weights, whereas active recall is you lifting the weights yourself. So how does it work? First, you read the material or watch it if it's a video. Then you close it. Then you write down everything you can remember from your memory. Then you check what you missed. After that, you focus on what you got wrong and repeat. That's it. By doing this, you realize that you spend more time focusing on what you don't know rather than what you already know. In my 100 level first semester, I was rereading my notes for 5 to 6 times. And whenever I went to my study group meetings and they asked me a question on the topic, I couldn't actually recall anything. My head went blank. And then, however, unfortunately, in my second semester, I discovered active recall. And the way I did this was to turn every piece of knowledge I wanted to read into a question. So instead of just reading from my boring sets of notes, I would read directly from my question bank. For example, if the topic is sources of law, the first question would be, what is the definition of law? Maybe according to a legal scholar, for example, Salmon. So what is the definition of sources of law according to Salmon? Then I will try and answer that. Add more questions, but that's just an example. I'll try and answer that rather than reading it passively. And I found out that I was able to remember things more better. We're moving on to the next strategy, which is spaced repetition. This is simply reviewing a material over an increased interval of time. How does this work? Well, your brain forgets information on a curve. It's called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. That sounds complicated, but don't worry. There's a link in the description of this video that perfectly explains the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And in that same link, it also explains how law students can memorize hundreds of cases for their law exams. So I hope you guys check it out. Now, the key to properly using spaced repetition is to embrace forgetting. That sounds odd. I also thought it was odd when I heard it for the first time. But hold on. Have you ever read something and then after a few hours, you realize that you have forgotten more than half of what you read? Well, that's the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve in action. Or even though you have forgotten that, and then you try and remember it, and you fail to remember it, then you go back to your notes, your textbook, or whatever to review that piece of knowledge, you will notice a massive increment in your memory retention. That is because when you forget things and then you try and remember it, it's going to build up more neural pathways, aka more brain storage for you to remember it. Let me use like a very common example. Have you ever met someone for the first time and the person told you his or her name, and then you guys met him another time in the future, and then you forgot the person's name? You now say, I'm sorry, can you tell me your name again? The person tells you their name. And then you meet again in the future. That's the third time you're meeting. Let's say you're careless, you forget it again. And then they tell you the third time. Then the fourth time you meet, you're going to notice that you're most likely going to remember that person's name. That is how spaced repetition works. You read something and then you forget it. And then you remind yourself or review it later. And then over space period intervals of time of reviewing it is going to be encoded into your long-term memory. That is how spaced repetition works. How to apply this? Study something today, review it tomorrow, review it 3 days later, review it 7 days later, review it in 14 days later. And now it's permanent in your long-term memory. Now, let's move to the next strategy, which is interleaving study. Personally, I have not implemented this into my study strategies, but it is science-backed. Interleaving involves mixing the topics that you study instead of studying it individually in blocks. This method forces you to think more on the right strategy to use, and it strengthens your learning and ultimately increases your understanding. For example, instead of reading contract law for 3 hours straight, you're going to read contract law for 1 hour. Then for the next hour, you're reading constitutional law. Then for the next hour, you're reading tort law. By doing this, you're going to be strengthening your brain's ability to adapt to different topics. And this now helps you in real life application, such as exams, because you're going to be tested. The topics that you're going to be tested on is going to be mixed, not in blocks. So this is what you need to do to study effectively. For a quick summary, effective study involves active recall, spaced repetition, and interleaving study. Test yourself, review it over time, mix it up. That's it. Simple. But most people will never do it. Alright, well, I've covered part 1 on effective studying. Next week, I'll be dropping part 2 on effective communication. We're going to be discussing the most simple, science-based, and practical principles on how to improve your communication by 10 times. So, stay tuned. Then the other Sunday, I'm going to drop part 3 on effective decision making. We're going to be talking about the strategies that will improve your decision making capability for small decisions, big decisions, the most tiny tasks that require decision making. And you see that you save a lot of time and mental energy. If you found this video valuable, here's what I need from you. 1. Subscribe to the channel. I post every Sunday. Real conversation, brutal pragmatism, no fluff. 2. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I post clips and daily insights. I'll start posting them. 3. Pick one strategy from today's episode and then apply it. Just pick one and then master it. And once you master one, you add another one and you see yourself progressing. This is Find Out with Steven, where curiosity meets action. See you next Sunday. And finally, if you want to study like a first-class law student, there's a link in the description of this video that will take you to another creator. His name is Gareth Ebbinghaus. He's a lawyer, a former lawyer. He used to post tutorials on effective study strategies for law students. So when you go to his account, scroll down. He's the one who took me from studying effectively to studying effectively. So I implore you to check that because you will learn a lot. What I explained today in this video, he explained it much more better, gave more images to elude it better. So thank you.